Roughly 45,000 years ago, our direct ancestors, Homo sapiens, who'd recently emerged from Africa, made their way into what is today southern Europe. The archaeological record shows that as we moved north, we encountered Neanderthals, a now extinct species of archaic human, who'd been living in Ice Age Europe for well over 250,000 years. What happened next is one of the greatest mysteries of human history. The Neanderthals were tough and smart and stronger than we Homo sapiens. They were skilled at surviving extreme Ice Age weather and hunting and killing large, dangerous animals, and fighting off packs of giant wolves and fearsome saber-toothed cats and massive woolly mammoths. And sometimes at just knowing when to haul ass and run for their lives. And yet, once we showed up, the Neanderthals disappeared, quickly, forever. It's estimated that we may have overlapped in time with them in Europe for just a few thousand years. Think about that. A whole human species gone, extinct, shortly after we arrive on the scene. So what on earth happened? Hi everyone, I'm Neil Bockoven. I'm a geologist, journalist, and the author of 3 books on our earliest ancestors. Welcome to my man cave. I've spent most of my adult life studying geology, and over the past decade, I've been able to focus in on the Paleolithic era, a period of prehistory from about 2.6 million to around 10,000 years ago. That led to my fascination with early modern humans. That's the early version of us, Homo sapiens. Additionally, I'm blown away thinking about all the rival human species that were around when we came along. And there were a bunch of them besides Neanderthals, at least 8 by some estimates. But now, there's only one, us. So what happened? Why are we the only human species left? We're going to get into that in depth in episode 2. In this episode, we're going to look at it from the angle that Neanderthals and some of these other human species aren't completely gone, as we'll see in a minute. Even as a kid, I was intrigued by these kind of ancient questions and mysteries. I loved fossils and bones and skulls and what they can teach us about those early beings and creatures, their lives and environments and evolution. By the way, this is Hobbs, my 10,000-year-old Smilodon saber-toothed cat. He's my wingman and bodyguard. Back in the day, if you had one of these guys with you, nobody was going to be messing with you. I guess fundamentally, what's driven me to make these videos and write my books is the belief that there's nothing more important than knowing who you are and where you came from. Faulkner was right. The past is never dead. It's not even past. And he was writing before there was any such thing as DNA research that can reach back in time. I also believe in the power and beauty of science. I'm sure this will surprise some of you, but I'm a hardcore science geek, and facts and accuracy are ultra important to me. In this video series, my promise to you is that I'll do my best to present only verifiable scientific facts. If there's any speculation or disagreement involved, I'll let you know. So with that, let's plunge into the deep end of Paleo Human Mysteries. Let me set the stage. It was 1980 when Gene Aul published Clan of the Cave Bear, the beginning of a series that sold more than 50 million copies. It was about Ayla, an orphan Homo sapiens girl who's raised by a band of Neanderthals. In the book, as Ayla gets older, she's raped by one of the Neanderthals and she has a hybrid child. Did something like that ever really happen between us and Neanderthals? Well, before we answer that question, there's something you really need to know that's vital to this conversation. And that is the huge, just really huge breakthroughs that are happening in archaeology and anthropology by the study of ancient DNA. That's the genome sequencing of very old bones. It's similar to 23andMe or Ancestry.com that some of you have had done, but on steroids. Scientists have used genome sequencing on thousands of old bones, some hundreds of years old, and some many tens of thousands of years old. And they can tell, well, it's been described by one renowned anthropologist as who had sex with whom and when.
Tarzan, you're a bad boy.
Good morning. I love you.
Good morning. I love you.
In fact, there's so much evidence of all the different human species getting it on during the Paleolithic that our delightful colleague Stefan Milo in the UK calls this entire era a boink fest. I love that term. And we're getting some incredible new learnings from this technology. Perhaps the best example is the tiny little finger bone from Denisova Cave in Siberia that shocked the world. In 2010, researchers had been digging in Denisova Cave in the Altai Mountains near Mongolia. They found 3 teeth and a pea-sized piece of finger bone. The strata below had evidence of Neanderthals. The strata above were Homo sapiens. So which of those did this bone belong to? Here's a replica of the bone. It's really tiny. Could they get DNA out of that? Well, because DNA is even smaller and you have a lot of it, end to end, there's about 1 meter of it in every cell of your body. And altogether, the DNA of all your cells would stretch to Pluto and back. That's over 10 billion miles. Okay, so they were able to get DNA from that little bone. And it turns out it was neither. It wasn't Homo sapien or Neanderthal. It was a whole new human species we knew nothing about.
You gotta be kidding me.
These Denisovans, or Denisovans, were at least as primitive as Neanderthals, although they apparently made some incredible jewelry, and they differed from Neanderthals about as much as Neanderthals differ from us. Well, that's mind-blowing by itself, but here is the kicker. It turns out that Denisovans have contributed more to our genome, at least in Southeast Asia, than Neanderthals have anywhere. Up to 6% of the Homo sapiens genome in Southeast Asia comes from Denisovans, and we knew nothing about them just 11 years ago. So getting back to Clan of the Cave Bear, Jean Ahl was correct and way ahead of her time in her book's premise that we had viable offspring with Neanderthals. But get this, remember in the movie her Ayla character was played by Daryl Hannah, blonde, blue-eyed, fair skin, whereas the Neanderthals were darker haired and darker skinned. What the genetics are showing us is that the racial roles were reversed. Neanderthals who'd been in Ice Age Europe for more than 250,000 years had the lighter skin and hair color, and we, who were freshly out of the tropics of Africa, had darker hair, eyes, and skin. Neanderthals were likely variable, but there may have been some light brown, blonde, and red-haired ones. It's possible that some of them had blue eyes. Another thing Jean may have gotten wrong is that her hybrid child, Dirk, was a male, and male hybrids likely didn't survive or they were infertile. Jean Ahl didn't prove that we interbred with Neanderthals. She just made an educated guess, and it really paid off for her in the literary world. It was Swedish geneticist Svante Pääbo that sequenced the first full Neanderthal genome in 2010. He and his team successfully sequenced most of the 3 billion base pairs of the nuclear DNA of a Neanderthal, and it was clear we had interbred with Neanderthals. By the way, it was his team that also did the DNA work on the Denisovan bone that I mentioned earlier. One more side note, 2 other scientists doing amazing ancient DNA work are Eska Willerslev and David Reich. Willerslev did the first ever full genome ancient DNA analysis, a wad of hair from a whalebone comb in Greenland. It was from one of the first settlers of Greenland 4,000 years ago. Think about that. That's 3,000 years before the Vikings really got going, and people were already in Greenland. And Reich's lab alone is now putting out more than 3,000 full genome analyses a year. That's up from what everyone did in 2010, which was 5. So data is pouring in, and we're learning so much. This really has turned out to be a decade of discovery. Okay, so what Pabo's group found was that people of European and Asian heritage are between 1 and 5% Neanderthal, generally around 2%. We got some good things from the Neanderthal genetics that helped our young survive, like increased immunity to viruses. But this increased immunity also brought along some bad things, like autoimmune diseases that kick in later in life. Our Neanderthal genes give us proclivities for diseases like lupus, Crohn's disease. Whoa, I have Crohn's disease, and it blew my mind that I may have gotten that from my Neanderthal genes. Other examples are biliary cirrhosis and type 2 diabetes. How common is that these days? We also get increased chances for actinic keratosis. Those are the red sun damage spots that I also get. And sometimes people get depression from Neanderthal genes. But the Neanderthals benefited from these genes because more of them survived into adulthood to procreate. And they didn't have to suffer from the problems later in life because, as well-known anthropologist John Hawkes has noted, more than 2/3 of Neanderthals died before age 30. Neanderthals had tough lives. To paraphrase Thomas Hobbes, no, that's not you, buddy. Thomas Hobbes, to paraphrase him, Neanderthals had lives that were nasty, brutish, and short. Let me just tell you a couple things in that regard. Almost every Neanderthal skeleton of any completeness found to date shows physical trauma. These guys got beaten to hell. Most also showed evidence of periodic malnutrition or famine. At Krapina Cave in Croatia, portions of 80 individuals have been found. The typical age at death was between 14 and 24. Some of these individuals have been butchered and eaten. Clearly, some Neanderthals were cannibals, and that doesn't appear to have been uncommon. Here's a quote from our friend Svante Pabo saying it was typical. So yeah, tough lives. For all the miraculous things that genetic research and genome sequencing have shown us, the stories held in those ancient bones have revealed some horrifying things about human nature as well, like rape, incest, cannibalism, and mass murder on an almost unimaginable scale. And much of that is just within our own population. We'll be exploring all that in episode 2, along with taking a hard look at what actually caused Neanderthals to go extinct so soon after meeting up with us. I'll just tell you that, as they say here in Texas, it ain't pretty. See you next time.